My name's Scott Lee. I'm alcoholic. And I'm so honored to be here. And thanks to Vince and Debbie and the committee and everyone. I'm a little bit overwhelmed right now. I'm honored to have my name on the list of these speakers that are here. Haven't they been fantastic? Hasn't it been amazing? And I've been to a number of conferences and seen members pick their own pocket by not coming on Sunday morning. You don't want to miss Sunday morning. You don't want to miss it. I'd like to open, I'm told Lois Wilson was asked what she did in a moment of silence, and she said, I invite God to the meeting. It's not that I don't believe God's here, I do believe that. But something special happens for me when I stop and honor that presence. And so in a moment, I'm going to ask you to do that. There may be somebody here that doesn't have a God. You got here like I did, terrified there might be one, based on what some very well-meaning religious people have been told them. If that's your situation, borrow mine. I recommend him very highly. He's got a great sense of humor. Been keeping me sober since 28 June 1984. I'm sober 41 years. That's a long time for a guy that only agreed to 28 days. And so, some people come here because they feel the heat, others because they see the light. I'm a heat type. I came because of the heat. And the heat will bring you, but it won't keep you here. So if you don't have a God, borrow mine. Address him as the God of Scott's limited understanding. Get you up on the right foot. And I'll just meet you back here. Let's acknowledge the presence of deity. Amen. Thank you. I should tell you also have a central nervous system disorder known as essential tremors. My hands shake and I have an involuntary negative head shake. So it's going to look as I speak like I disagree with what I'm saying. I don't. I may later because I'm still learning, okay? But don't trust the head shake thing. The Al-Anons say trust the actions, not the words. We're going to suspend that for about the next hour. And I was asked to speak on steps 8 and 9. Actually, I volunteered. I was so appreciated the chance to come here. And I'm fascinated by the steps and how they've changed my life. I was, as a newcomer, absolutely terrified of steps 4, 5, and 9. If you're new, and who's here sober less than a year? Can you show hands? Less than a year. Wow, okay. I would assume you're the victims of good sponsorship. That's probably why you're here. And you may be afraid of those steps also. And I hope my good friends have lightened your concern about some of those, and I hope I can do that here. And before that, I want to thank Roger again. If we don't support folks like that financially, the sad day will come when these things are not recorded, and I wouldn't be here if they hadn't been. When I was new, an old timer was giving me cassettes like this, 8 at a time. I'm back in a week. Heard them all. He did it again. I might not be here if it wasn't for people like this. And I have purchased something from him, and I hope you do too, beyond just this weekend. He's got all kinds of great stuff up there. Anyway, thank you, Roger. I appreciate you. And my first sponsor was a really hardcore kind of guy. He wanted me to read the big book, and then he got even more hardcore. He wanted me to read just the black part. And then he got rough. He wanted me to read all of the black part, which I thought was excessive. And this last part, and Zine has been a great host, by the way. Thank you, sir. This last thing, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and people about us. When I read all of it, I realize that my mission is not to be of maximum service to God and people about me. I wouldn't have any idea which way to turn out of the driveway to go to do that. I have no idea. To fit myself, I know how to do that, because you've taught me. It's the 12 steps, and it's daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, taking meetings into jails and prisons and treatment centers, and sponsoring. There's just these things that we do. So I can fit myself. I'm told that the master craftsman reaches for the best tool laying the closest to his hand. My job isn't to do his job. My job is to be the best tool I can be and reside as close to his hand as I can. And then he uses me when he wants to. And I'm not an expert. I'm a satisfied customer. I think there are an awful lot of really good ways to do what's in this book. And I'm just going to talk about how I do this. If your sponsor has you doing other things, I think that's fantastic. I'm cheering for you. This is just simply what I do. If you're new, I would like to make a suggestion. Don't start on step 9. You're going to make a mess instead of an amend. And that's the voice of experience you're listening to. I was in treatment when I started making amends, and that worked out every bit as bad as you think it did. And I wound up later making amends for having tried to make amends. So it's not time. My sponsor, when I finally got one, explained to me that the steps had been numbered so geniuses like Scott didn't try to take them out of order. He was too late. But so don't start. I think there are 3 things necessary to do a step 9. The first 8 steps, adult supervision, and a loving God. For those of you who read the big book regularly, it's how you find all the new stuff. And the ones laughing know what I'm talking about. They made some I'm not going to be able to cover all the changes they made last year, but I'll hit just a couple of them. On page 13 in Bill's story, the 11th line, the last word is friend, capital F, friend. It's a reference to God as a friend. I don't think it's possible to do any of the step work without a friendly God. And I got here afraid there might be one. God's will. God's going to get you for that. And I got here being taught about an angry God. And I couldn't work with that because I just couldn't. So if you got an angry God, I'd like to recommend that you put him on furlough and hire you a nice one. And then on page 46, 2 things that I think are so powerful. One is impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. So I had to get out of the business of understanding God. My sponsor said if God were small enough for me to understand, he wouldn't be big enough to handle things I'm going to need for him to handle. My sponsor also says the teacup of my mind cannot contain the ocean of God. And I think that's pretty accurate. So what we're saying is I don't have to believe what anybody else ever told me about God. It doesn't matter how qualified they claim to be. But the piece that lights me up on this page is 5 lines from the bottom. It says, we found that God does not make too hard terms of those who seek him. Let me translate that into Tennessee English for you. God ain't mad at us. Boy, that was some good news. That's not what I've been told. So as I begin to embrace the idea of allowing God, there starts to be hope. And the hope begins when I become the problem. On page 62, it says, so our troubles we think are basically our own making. That's maybe the best news I ever got. Because if the problem really is the cops, the courts, the judges, the Russians, the Chinese, my future ex-wife, her mother, and their lawyer, if those people really are the problem, I lose. The good news is that I am the problem. If I bring some willingness to this party, we can work on that. If they got to move a quarter of an inch, I'm cooked. The sponsor told me that willingness, bottom, and surrender all have the exact same definition. It's when someone who's qualified, my sponsor example, asks me to do something I don't like, that I don't think will help, that I don't think matters, that I don't want to do, and I do it anyway. It is that do it anyway that is willingness, bottom, and surrender by definition. I find in the reading on steps 8 and 9, 5 different prayers, and they're all for willingness. The ability to do something that I wasn't going to do without alcoholic death hanging over my head. I'm just going to talk about what I do. When I get a new man to step 8, I start him sponsoring. By this time, he's got some message. And and they always say the same thing, I'm not ready. I say, boy, I hope you don't ever think you're ready. I hope I don't ever think I'm ready. Page 159, they're talking about 3 individuals, so Dr. Bob, Bill Dodson, whose picture's over there, and who's AA number 3, and Ernie Galbraith, who's AA number 4. Here's a single sentence. It says, a year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Those 3, with access to a hospital with drunks in it. In a year and a half, succeeded with 7. How many missed? A lot. And this is Scott's 2 rules of sponsorship. Rule 1, if they're ready, I can't do it wrong. If they're not ready, I can't do it right. It's not up to me. Rule 2 is I can't take credit for the ones that make it, because if I do, I get the blame for the ones that don't. Some of them are going to die. And so that simplifies it. So we get my newcomer a newcomer. And we get his newcomer's permission for him to talk to me in detail about his life. Blanket permission. And I will coach my sponsee through coaching his sponsee through this work. Don Pritz from Denver was one of my great teachers. And I asked him one time, what's a sponsor's primary responsibility? And he says to maintain the integrity of the message. Just for fun, 2 years later, I asked him the same question. And he said, it's not allow the sponsee to settle for relief, but to get him all the way to recovery. It's the same answer. By the time I get him to step 9, his life has changed. His motivation has waned. He's got a good job. He brings the entire paycheck home. He knows where all the dents in the car came from. His key fits in the front door. When he walks in, they don't scatter. His phone rings. That's a miracle. He answers, admits it him, another miracle. He's sleeping in the big bed again. Now he may not have crossover privileges, but he's back in the big bed. And his motivation has waned, and I got to keep him moving. So there are 2 pieces I do with that. One is I get him sponsoring. He will very quickly figure out he does not want his sponsee to get to 8 before he finishes 9. So it helps me keep him moving. It's a really fine tool for sponsorship as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing is I have him schedule. So we got your list everybody you think you want to amend to. And if you can't tell me how you harmed them, I don't think you want them amend. I've been speaking to these microphones for over 30 years. It wasn't my fault, but I've been doing a lot of it. And I have on a number of occasions at a conference had an individual come up to me and say, I owe you an amend. It's something I've never seen before in my life. I said, really? Okay. I say, well, I've heard some of your talks, and I thought you were a complete jerk, but now I met you, I don't think you're near as bad a jerk as I thought you were. That's what they're saying. And so I finally realized, what I realized is, if you can't tell me how you harm me, you don't owe me an amend. So I ask you, before you give me the amend, how'd you harm me? I didn't harm you. Great, then you don't owe me an amend. Thinking bad about me did not harm me, it harmed you. So for my sponsee, you got to be able to tell me how you harmed him. And let's get a list. And he's going to look at a list of 60 amends and say to himself, I can't make 60 amends. And he can't. But he can make 1 tomorrow. And we're only 2 months from finishing this. So I ask him to start scheduling them. Pick out the first 10 you want to make. And if they make sense to me, I'll say, okay, that's great. Let's talk about what we think this amend might be. Because we're not going to ask you to turn your will and life over to the care of someone who may be in love with hating you. One of the first men I sponsored who had more time than I did said that before he got sober, he hated everybody and he wished there was more of them. And if you'd gone to him to make amends, he would have bashed you for the rest of your life if you would have allowed it. So I'm not asking you to turn your will and life over to the care of somebody who may be in love with hating you. We need to find out what he thinks the amends should be, but you and I prayerfully are the answer to that question. He's not. And so let's go ahead and schedule it. I learned this from Don, is you need to call ahead, schedule an appointment, and let them know what you're coming for. Don't blindside them. Thank you for that. And so you got one scheduled tomorrow afternoon at 2. My rule is 4 breaths is all you get. Amend is not a lecture course. My mother did not need to hear my 5th step. Here's amend to Mom. I wasn't as good a son to you as I could have been. I know I broke your heart. I'm living a better life today, and part of that is cleaning up my past. Do you need to talk to me about how I harmed you? How can I make it right? The end. For me, that's how I approach it. If your sponsor has you do something else, I think they're right. And then if she needs to talk about it, I need to listen to it. But she doesn't, I do not need to replay all that. It's not going to help her for me to replay all that stuff. And so he's got one tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. And you're going to be sure you don't throw in an excuse. If you throw in an excuse for yourself, you take away all the power from them. That's why I limit them to 4 breaths. Because the longer you talk, the better chance you're going to throw in an excuse for yourself. It's going to take away all the power for the other person. So call me tomorrow afternoon at 2:15. Okay, the men went fine. Who's next on the list? When can you call them? Why can't you call them right now? Great. When's it scheduled for? Tomorrow afternoon at 3? Great. I'll look at your call at 3:15. And just keep doing them one at a time. Just simply schedule. A schedule is a fairly simple thing. I'm going to be controversial a couple of times here, and I'd like to apologize for that. This is just how it is for me. When I was new, I heard this term living amends, and I liked that a lot. I thought, okay, I know what that means. That means I don't have to go face these people. I can just go ahead and be a good guy from now on, and that'll be enough. My sponsor didn't think so. And he was kind of a hardcore. And I'll give you an example. I hear people say my amends to my children will never be complete. Mine are. I have 2 children. They are alleged adults. And I went to them individually. I did something similar with Mom. Wasn't as good as Dad to you. I know did some things that harmed you. Let's talk about it. Do you need to talk to me? When we finished that conversation, I asked for their forgiveness. They gave it. I'm trying to be the best father I can be today. It is not 9-step work. It's 12. Spiritually awakened men who have children endeavor to be good fathers. If I think it's 9-step work, I've not accepted their forgiveness or God's or my own. And I have work to do. And for me, there's no such animal as living amends. I do not owe them amends anymore. The fact that I'm trying to be the best dad I can be today isn't 9-step work. I can come down off the cross. I don't have to live in that guilt, and I think it's a really important piece. Step 9 to me is the freedom step. I'll tell you a story. I was sitting by a stream some time ago without fishing gear in my hand, which is real unusual. And yeah, it was a waste. And I've got a very serious case of smallmouth bass. And I'm looking across the stream and I saw a cloud. And I'm looking at the cloud. It occurred to me, every drop of rain in that cloud's following God's will perfectly. There's no doubt about it. So's that tree, so's the bird in the tree, so is the little fish in the stream. Why can't God? If they can, and I know they are, why can't I? And it was on me hard. I got my answer, and the answer is I am. I do not believe God put me here to be perfect. If you think you're supposed to be perfect, I wish you good luck. You're going to need a lot of it. But if it's not my job to be perfect, what's my job? My job's to make mistakes. They've sent the right guy. And all my life they tell me, well, we learn from our mistakes. Really? Well, in that case, nobody in this room's been arrested more than once. Maybe not. Maybe not. So here's the definition for me. A mistake is an invitation to a lesson. That's all it is. If I'd already learned the lesson, I would not have made the mistake. So it's all it is. And I don't have the power to make a mistake so ugly that God can't turn it into wonderful. I regularly watch him using the worst things I've ever done as tools to help other people. We're going to see that in a few minutes. Yeah, I simply don't have that power. I just don't. And so this is the learning process as I understand it today. 1, make a mistake. It's a mistake, it's a lesson dressed in its work clothes. That's all it is. 2, be notified I made a mistake. I don't always know. Sometimes you got to tell me, I don't know. 3, own the mistake. Oh, yeah, fellas, I did that. If they only know 80%, I got to tell them the other 20. 4, consult a spiritual advisor about how to make the amend. Usually, there's an amend to be made. 6, learn the lesson. The lesson does not come with the making the mistake. It comes with the making of the amend. That's why 9 is the freedom step. I'm not punished for my sins. I'm punished by them. I'm in the prison of these terrible things I've done to other people. And I'm the only one that has the key. So 6 is learn the lesson. 7 is share the lesson. That's what really sets it for me. 8, when I share the lesson, I have to tell you I made the mistake. If I just share the lesson, I'm preaching and nobody wants to hear it. 9, make the next mistake. I have no idea what God's plan is, but I know his will is for me to mess up. I know that. That is such a tremendous freedom. We use the term progress all the time. I give you Scott's definition of progress. Progress is making the same old mistake a little less often, or making a new and finer quality mistake. Anything beyond that is perfection. And that's not my assignment. It's not my assignment. It's not only okay that I make mistakes, it's why I'm here. I believe Earth is a school, and I think I probably flunked out of somewhere else, or I was expelled as a behavior problem. If you're an adult story, it makes sense to you. And the first lesson was, Scott, how does it work when you run full throttle after your own will? How's that working? That was lesson one. I was 41 years old. Somebody asked me the other day, what's the hardest step? I said, step one. It took me 41 years. That's a long time. But boy, it's been worth it. It has so been worth it. So I have my own permission to make mistakes. There's a tremendous freedom in that. But it's only half the freedom. The other half is you have my permission to make mistakes. That includes major political figures I like and don't like, all the guys I sponsor and their significant others, all my family members, those of you who got your driver's licenses out of Cheerios boxes, even my husband-in-law. I see some puzzled looks. I'm from the South. My husband-in-law is the guy that's currently married to my first wife. Everybody has my permission to make mistakes. Because if I'm going to be upset by what you do, I'm a prisoner of your behavior. And I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. I was a prisoner for way too long. No. And so when I give you permission to make mistakes, it frees me. That's what this whole thing is about. It's about new freedom. The old freedom was 4 shots of Cuervo Gold. The new freedom is I'm okay with me. But I'm stuck in here now. See this? That looks like skin to you. It's a prison. It's a prison. I'm stuck in here. I used to get out all the time, just like you did. When I'm trapped in here all the time now. So the first thing I had to do so I could stand it was to clean it up. And that's what steps 4 through 9 were about cleaning it up so I could stand to be in here. So half the freedom is I have my own permission to make mistakes. The other half is you have my permission to make mistakes. And those two things have freed me, absolutely freed me at a level I did not know was available. I discovered the source of all anger. I know where it all comes from. Mine all comes from being sure I'm right. Think about it. I've never been angry when I'm absolutely certain I was right, and being right comes from having passed judgment. I have to judge to be right to be angry. So judgment is the core problem. Anger is a symptom. And if I get out of the judgment business, which is what I was just describing, I don't get right. If I don't get right, I don't get angry. When I got that information and began to implement it in my life, my amount of anger just started dropping really fast. And I don't do it perfectly. I do occasionally get upset. And I claim to serve the God of love. And I claim that that's a full-time job. And I can't judge and love at the same time. I can't be angry and love at the same time. So when I find myself angry, my prayer is, it says pause when agitated. It actually says pause when agitated or doubtful. We rarely read the doubtful thing. We're alcoholics. We're not right very often, but we're never in doubt. And so I think God's waiting patiently for me in the pause. Father, I'm angry again. I've judged. Please take away this judgment and anger and grant me sadness and love. If I go back into whatever it is with anger and judgment, it gets ugly and I eventually make amends, which I do not enjoy doing. If I can go back with love and sadness, and love and sadness travel well together. Anger and love never do. If I go back with love and sadness, it opens my heart and theirs, and I don't make amends. I have a deep sadness. I'm greatly concerned. Feel the difference in that? And all I do is I just have to ask for it. I don't think God sent me here to judge. I don't know a lot about God's will, but I'm pretty sure he did not send me here to judge. I had the privilege several years ago of doing a workshop up in Banff and was talking about this. One of the trickiest ones, and I'm doing this the best I can, and I'd love to be coached. If somebody's got some ideas on this, I really want to hear them. How does a gentleman approach a lady whose charms he's availed himself of lightly and not make her feel cheap? That's a pretty good question. The first piece is don't contact her. Get a lady from your home group to make the contact. You don't want her new husband to say, who was that guy on the phone? What did he want? You can't let that happen. And you do that by having a lady from your home group call and say, I'm friends with Scott Lee. He believes he's harmed you and he'd like to make amends to you. Are you willing for him to? If she says, no, we're finished here. If she says yes, let's talk about how that's going to happen. And I would tell a story. I'll take virtually anyone through the steps if I can work it into my schedule. And I had a business associate years ago who had watched me through my active phase, and finally said to me one day, he said, can I take those 12 steps? I'm pretty sure I'm not an alcoholic. I said, I've been watching you a long time. No, you don't have the gift. But he said, can I take the 12 steps? I've seen what they've done to your life. And I said, yeah. Having me for a close friend qualifies you for Al-Anon. If you go to 2 Al-Anon meetings a week and be totally present, let me tell you what that means. It means you don't drink a beer while you're watching the ball game or mowing the grass. You don't have a glass of wine with your steak. And you and your girlfriend don't smoke a joint on the way to the bedroom. All right, and I want you totally present. I'll take you through the steps. I did. We got to step 9. He had a lady whose charms he'd availed himself of lightly. We got a lady to make the initial contact, and he discovered a daughter and 2 grandchildren he didn't know existed, and today they're a family. Yeah. And we see miracles like that all the time. I have permission to tell you the stories I'm about to tell. Years ago, I sponsored a fellow who, in about roughly the 4th grade, one autumn afternoon, grabbed another kid's stocking cap behind his back. Nobody saw it, just boom, it's gone. And when no one's looking, he flings it up in a tree and it disappears, hides in the branches. He never admits it. That kid's from a poor family goes through that winter without a hat. And here we are 30 years later. He doesn't know the kid's name. The school is no longer there. It's pretty obvious there's no way to make amends. Don't you ever believe it. And he and I sit prayerfully. And the next day, all the kids at the Nashville orphanage get Tennessee Titans stocking caps. And my sponsor got free. A way will be shown. I've had the privilege for a number of years of sponsoring a man in Kiev, Ukraine. He got out, by the way, a few months ago. Those of you who know Oleg, he's in Boston now. But when I first started working with him, I had him in the States. For a while, I got him through the work. He went back to Ukraine, and I said, get a sponsor back there. I know he's there. I know the guy that took it. And he stayed in touch with me. And he said, there's no sponsors here. Nobody can get 6 months. They got the big book in Russian. They all read it and understand it. But they don't have any sponsorship, and nobody can get 6 months. So I continued to work with him, and I told him he had to sponsor a couple of women. It's got to start somewhere. And he did. But he would call me, and he'd say, I'm sponsoring this guy, and he fill in the blank. What's he amend? I'd say, you and he sit prayerfully more than once. And if you don't get an answer, call me. He don't call. A way will be shown. Some absolutely astonishing things. I'll share one of my close friends today, a guy I sponsored for about his first 15 years. At age 30, he was a vice president for a major Wall Street firm. If you're into that stuff at all, you would know the name if I said it. And when he got sober, he was living in a borrowed car. And he borrowed it from his brother. It was convertible, and it leaked. And he had just gotten his head far enough above water to get into a little efficiency apartment. And he comes home to an answering machine. Younger people ask somebody with gray hair, they'll say what that is. And he comes home one day and he pushes the button on his answering machine. And it says something to the extent of, this is Agent Smith of the Internal Revenue Service. You have an appointment in my office at 1212 Church Street, room 400, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. If that's in conflict with your schedule, I'd like to suggest you change your schedule. Click. And he walked out of that meeting with a bill for $162,000. Yeah. And he said, what do I do? I said, well, collect the paperwork they've asked for. You said you want God to be real in your life. Treat him like he's real. They tell me if I want to strengthen a muscle, I should use it. Claim you want stronger faith? Welcome to step 9. Here you go. So I said, treat God like he's real. Ask him to go with you. And that morning, do your prayer and meditation, collect your paperwork, Hold the door, ask God to go with you. Go down to the car, open the passenger door, move the junk, ask him to get in. Drive in a manner that neither endangers nor enrages any of his other children. Park, walk around the car, open the door, ask him to go with you. He said when he walked into the agent's office the second time, there were 2 chairs on his side of the desk. And he knew he was going to win. And 6 months later, they wrote him a check for $1,200. Don't doubt the power. I'm going to tell a couple of my own. I flew a gunship in Vietnam. I was an Air Force pilot for 5 years. I flew a gunship in Vietnam. And I was a multi-line manufacturer's representative, and I had a company in another state. I'm trying to be real careful not to identify who this guy is. And their sales manager had been a Green Beret. And he was on the ground in Laos. When he got there, the Hill tribesmen were carrying crossbows. And he took them M16s and led them in combat in North Vietnam and northern Laos for 2 years. This man does not know how many times he killed with his hands. He doesn't know. And we don't know that we ever worked together, but guys flying my airplane saved his life a number of times. We're pretty close. And we were drunk one night, and he admits that he's sleeping with the boss's daughter. I'm drunk another night, and I say it, and it gets back to him. And I, of course, lie my way out of it. I get sober. I owe an amend. And he came to Nashville for a trade show, and he was in the Opryland Hotel. And I called him, and I said, I want to come over. He said, oh, yeah. He's just always excited to see me. And he gave me his room number, and I did that. I asked God to go with me. I held the car door and all that. I can remember standing outside of his door like this, realizing that if I knock on this door and walk in there and tell this man the truth, if he decides to kill me, I won't even be able to slow him down. I can be a dead man in 5 minutes. I'm not holding myself up as a shining example. What I'm saying is, don't doubt the power. And I walked in there and I was able to do that, to tell him the truth. And let me tell you how that amend went. A month later, my wife and I were guests in his home as we went to his state for vacation. Don't doubt the power. This is just me. There's nothing political in this. This is just me. When I did my first fifth step, there were 2 things that I was sure would never see the light of day again. One of them was I'm a heterosexual male. I had my last homosexual experience when I was 19 and started when I was 12. I never liked it. The best analysis I can do is that my father had beaten me down so far that I could not say no to anyone for any reason. I was 19. Do you note that my demeanor didn't change when I told you that? It is simply a fact out of my past. And I share that here because some guy in here might die if I don't. If you got that one, guys, and it's killing you, you can't tell anyone, I'm going to be here this weekend. Come find me, we'll talk. Please come find me. When I told that the first time at my first fifth step, I was sure we'd never see the light of day again. And now I say it into microphones. We talk about a new freedom. It is simply a fact out of my past. I'm no longer emotionally connected to it because that's what this process did for me. I would tell you also, I've sponsored a number of gay men. I currently sponsor one who's maybe the best AA member I know. And what twisted him up was trying to have heterosexual experiences. So I'm not judging anyone. I'm saying I simply understand. I simply understand. I've heard well over 100 fifth steps from heterosexual males. I've heard 6 that did not have a homosexual experience of some kind. If that's the one that's killing you guys, come see me. Please do yourself a favor. This other one can be a political hot potato. Please don't let it be that. This is simply my story. As a young man, I paid for an abortion, and it felt like I'd killed one of my own children. And I drank that away, and I smoked it away. I did whatever was necessary a large number of times. And I was in treatment in June of '84, and I couldn't sleep, and I was laying there about the 4th night, not sleeping again, and that thought came to me, what I had done, and I couldn't get it out. I used to be able to get it out of there. You know, Jack Daniels will knock that out. Jose Cuervo, I can't get it out of there. And I got this horrible thing I've done all over me, and I can't get anything between me and that. And I reached what I was going to call bottom for the next 30 years. I got to the place where I would have paid any price and done anything to get out from under that grief. And this is very difficult to describe, but from in my chest, this happened. My mind did not think it. My vocal cords did not move. From in here, screamed. It was loud, God, forgive me. And everything I'm going to tell you happened in the next moment. If you ever had x-rays taken of your teeth, when they picked that lead apron up off of you, it felt like something heavy laying all over me. It flew off of me, and my body felt so light, I thought I was going to float up off the bed, and it did not scare me. At the same moment, this magnificent white light came on, just shining on me and on my bed. And the light had a warmth and a texture, and I could feel it in every cell of my body, and I was aware of every cell of my body. And it felt so good it almost hurt, and I can't explain any of that either. There was a partition behind my head about a foot. It came within about a foot of the ceiling, and the light was coming over, but all focused just on me. I've never seen light do that. And what I knew was that there was a God was right there on the other side of that. That God had the power to forgive me, and I was forgiven. I used to say he forgave me then, but I don't speak for God. I'm not comfortable around people that do. But I can tell you, I received the forgiveness then for the worst thing I'd ever done. It's the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. And I lay in the presence of infinite love, and I don't know how long. Because what we call time simply does not exist in that presence. It just isn't there. And I'm not aware of anything else that passed between us. I simply don't know. At some point, I slept. And I know that because I woke up the next morning. I hadn't done that in several days. I woke up wanting to be one of his guys. If you haven't had one of those, I think it's because you weren't sick enough to need one. And I actually mean that. I think I was on the verge of death and nobody knew it. This is page 12 in Bill's story. But soon the sins of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, most of those within myself. I do not believe that event alone would have gotten me the 41 years that I currently have. Every year I get to tell this story to a lot of us in sittings like this, and every year people come to me and say, I had one of those experiences and I drank again after it. It was just a cornerstone. That's all it was. It was just a cornerstone. And so I get to step 8, and I owe amends to an unborn child. I didn't think it was possible. I've been in the hands of big book people since I got here. This is page 83. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. That child can't be seen. I wrote a letter. I was sat down, handed a plain white sheet of paper, a pen, and I wrote a letter, and I cried. And I'd like to suggest, by the way, if you can't cry, don't do this. I'm told that my tears are the holy water that washes the windows of my soul. And it was not the writing that freed me. Because note again, my demeanor's not changing when I tell you this. New freedom. It was not the writing, it was the tears. If you can't cry, if you need to learn to cry, see me afterward. I'll be standing right over here somewhere. I came to you unable to cry. I hadn't cried in 20 years when I got here. I was watching a very masculine guy in my home group crying a couple times a week, and I finally said to him, tell me about the tears. And he says, somebody says something beautiful, it touches my heart, and I weep, and it feels so good. I said, I can't cry. He said, I'll teach you. And he did. And if the tears get here, you're going to see them, believe me. I am not embarrassed about it. I've cried in front of bigger crowds than this one, and I'm not unhappy with it. I think my emotions are how my spirit communicates with my mind and my body. I cannot afford to block that channel. So I recommend if you can't cry, learn to cry first. I wasn't kidding. I'll give you my email address. I'll send it's a 2-page Word document. I'll teach you. But I need to warn you guys, gentlemen, if you start crying at appropriate times and places, you're going to attract a lot of women. Now, I warned you, because the ladies are not buying that John Wayne garbage that you're putting out. They're not buying it. And they see a guy in touch with his emotions that lights them up. We're going to talk about something else now. And so when I finished writing the letter and I thought I'd cried out, I was told to sign it, Love, Dad. And I had one more cry. I got a little one now. I was handed a plain white envelope, said address the envelope. I said, where's the child? With God, right, in heaven, address the envelope. I addressed an envelope to an unborn child in heaven. No return address. extra postage. That's a long way from Nashville. And I got free. In my lineage, we don't hear fifth steps, we exchange. A number of years later, a man that I sponsored called me, and he said, I didn't have the abortion experience, but I sponsor a guy that did. Will you sit with him with a letter? And I said, you know it. When he finished his letter and I gave him the envelope, he said, I think I want to burn this. Not to destroy it, but to send it in smoke. I said, yeah, you bet. We went out to the garden and he burned it and crumbled the ashes up and put them on the roses. And I don't have his permission to tell you that. He begged me to tell you because he got free. He got free. I simply don't have the power to make mistakes so ugly that God can't turn it into wonderful. He uses the very worst things I've ever done as tools to help other people. It might not be an unborn child. It could be a grandparent. It could be anybody that's already gone. It could be anybody. And we can get free. I don't have the power to make a mistake so ugly that God can't turn it into wonderful. It's really that simple. If I could tell the whole fellowship a single thing, it might be this piece right here. A lady friend of mine in another state was sponsoring a woman who had prostituted herself. And she had herself on her own 8-step list. I think generally that's not a good idea. This is a clear exception. How to make amends to herself for that. This is what they came up with. She sat down and figured out, math, how much money she thought she'd made that way. And she went out and earned that amount of money legitimately and donated it to Magdalene House and some other charities that help women get out of that life. And what she said was, I sold my self-esteem, I'm buying it back. Don't doubt the power. Don't doubt the power. There's nothing to be afraid of here. Sponsor holding one hand and God holding the other. There's nothing that amends can't be made for. There just isn't anything. That one still overpowers me. Because I didn't think they were going to find one. They did. This is a gift from my former wife, Linda Q. She's a great Al-Anon speaker. She said, you're aware of your sins of commission, things you did that harmed people. What you missed is your sins of omission. I said, okay, help me understand that. She said, to whom do you owe generous thanks that never heard it? I thought, wow, yeah. So I went back to my major professor in college and thanked him. I would have never graduated college without that individual, without that guy. When I was a senior in college, I was in ROTC, and I had a contract with the Air Force to be a pilot. If I graduated and passed a pilot physical, they gave me 30 hours of flying time in a little Cessna 172. And my instructor was a former Air Force colonel. And he was as mean as a divorce lawyer. I'll quote him for you. The powder altitude's 1,000 feet, fathead. That's what he called me. This is 1,003. Right, and it's supposed to be 1,000. He saw that I had the gift, and he wouldn't let me coast. And he set up my Air Force career. I learned to fly it that way. I was 5 years in the cockpit. The lowest I ever ranked in anything having to do with an airplane was second. And my classmates said I got politically screwed out of first on that one because of what he did. I got to go tell him that. I got to go tell him. And I went to my mother at a different time. This is many years later. And I said, I need to thank you. What a fabulous mother you were to me. Thank you for all your sacrifice. Thank you for your love. Thank you for all I learned. Thank you for your big heart. Thank you for the freedom to make mistakes. Thanks for the freedom to go when it was my time. Thank you. And I went home and I wrote that in a letter to her and I mailed it to her. My mother died in a nursing home of Alzheimer's and she didn't have much left at the end. She had that letter. I ask you, who didn't you thank? Who didn't you thank? This immense thing isn't all in red ink. There's so much joy here. There's so much joy. I want to share an unrelated thing just because of the honor. My third sponsor's nickname was Rusty. At the end of his drinking, he was mixing mouthwash with Kool-Aid, and he wet his pants so many times his zipper rusted shut. And we nicknamed him Rusty in honor of the zipper. And he loved his nickname. I'll give you two beauties from him. The first one he said is, I'm not responsible for what I think. I'm responsible for how long I think it. I can't keep garbage from showing up here. It gets dirty up here, I can sweep. That's my responsibility. Sandy Beach said one time that measure of my recovery is not if I get off the spiritual path. He wasn't talking about relapse. He said we all get off the spiritual path. Measure of my recovery is how quickly I get back on. Same thing. The other one from Rusty, which was my favorite, he said, in the history of this planet, no human has ever been put in an insane asylum for being insane. Never, not once. The person in there for acting insane. And no one's been let out for being sane. They let us out for acting sane. So in those days when you're crazy, if you don't act on it, they won't know. Don't tell them they're not ready. Pick up the phone. Tell one of us we're ready and we are not all crazy on the same day. That's some good information right there. So through the forgiveness process that my sponsor took me through in step 4 and through my own work in step 9, I become emotionally disconnected from all of your mistakes and all of mine. And they're now simply facts. Like a fact, I live in Nashville. It's just a fact, just like those other things. We talked about that earlier. That's what this whole thing is about. For those who are new, now this is just what I think. I do not think our mission here is to change you should never drink again. It's not it. That's a side effect. It's to change you should never want to drink again. I'm sober since 28 June of 84. The last time I wanted one was sometime in December of 84. I'd had a sponsor for about a month. I was somewhere in the step work. That's all I can tell you. I just don't know. Since then, life has happened. I have made way too much money. I've been up against bankruptcy. I've had 2 divorces, one I wanted and one I didn't. My daughter shot herself and survived. She's doing just fine, by the way. I talked to her yesterday. I was diagnosed with cancer in my throat. They took my teeth, as I'm sure you've noticed. I'm on a liquid diet for the rest of my life because of what they did to my throat. That's not a big deal. I came to you on a liquid diet, it's just a different liquid. But you won't see me in the restaurant because watching other people eat is not my favorite thing to do. I dream about food about twice a week. But through all of that, I have not wanted to drink. And it's because alcohol, and I'm actually what they call tri-addicted. I'm addicted to everything I tried. And alcohol and all that other stuff was never my problem, it was my answer. That's why I couldn't put it down and leave it down. Because when I did, it left me without an answer. And I'm the kind of guy who needs an answer. I've never been alcoholic in the first place. So to put it down and leave it down, I was going to have to pick up a new answer that was better than the old one, and it is. And it happens somewhere in the step work, and it varies by individual. I've seen it all over the board. No telling where it's going to happen. Somewhere in there, something happens. And that urge to drink goes away. And it becomes a non-issue. I just become disinterested in it, is kind of what happened to me. And I believe that'll happen to you if you'll do this stuff. I didn't know I was going to do this. Page 164, for those of you who brought your books to class. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the records of your past. Give freely what you find to join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. The fellowship of AA is very simple to get in. You say you're alcoholic, you're in AA? You're right, you are. That's the only requirement for membership in the fellowship of AA. Membership in the fellowship of the Spirit has a whole lot more things, and they look to me like the steps in narrative form. In my tenure, I've only seen 2 individuals that I know for certain did these 12 steps, did what's in this book, Drink Again. I've seen 2. One of them married his new higher power, and she didn't like how much time he spent with us. And he cut it way back. You know how well that worked. He's back now. He's got 16 years now. And the other one's a hotel manager. He started running a dude ranch in Arizona, 40 miles from the nearest meeting, quit going. And 2 years later, he drank for 2 weeks. Today, he's sober over 20 years. So only 2 people I know that did this work that drank again, the only 2. And this is what I see. They allowed their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit to lapse. And when that membership lapsed, they relapsed. When they re-upped their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit, they got healthy again. And they're doing just fine. They're doing just fine. So I've seen members of the fellowship of AA drink. Members in the fellowship of the Spirit don't. That's why the step work is so critically important. My sponsor was just a hard ankle on that. And so I don't think we're here to change anybody into anything. I was told you're already everything you ever needed to be. You just didn't know it. You just didn't know it. And what we do is we dig this poison out of your soul with steps 4 through 9 and allow the real you to just simply emerge. That's what this whole thing is about. I have a picture of myself. If anybody's seen me on Zoom, it's over my shoulder. I blew it. It was a wallet-sized picture. I blew it up 2 feet by 3 feet. And the last time I was between wives, I put it on the wall at the foot of my bed. And it was the last thing I saw him at night and the first thing I saw in the morning. I was looking at it one day and I thought, who would he have become if all that stuff had not happened? And he'd gotten all the nurturing and love and teaching that he deserved. Who would he have become? I got my answer. The answer is, that's my assignment. It's my assignment to become the man he would have become. I've been emotionally disconnected from all of that stuff. The only question is, am I willing to do the work? So far, I have been. Let me tell you about him. He was excited to be alive. He woke up that way every morning. He had no concern about his future. He trusted those who provided for him. He judged no one. He never used bad language. He loved everybody. He was happy, joyous, and free, living in the moment. That's who he was, and that's what you've done with me. I wish I had a sufficient way to thank you. I don't think I do. I owe you my life, I owe you my freedom, I owe you everything. And what happened was, when I came to you, I was convinced in the core of my soul that I wasn't good enough. Nothing I ever did could measure up. And I wasn't worthy of love or respect or anything good. Not true. God didn't make any junk. God didn't make any junk. I get a choice each morning. I'm told the hummingbird and the buzzard fly over the same field. One looking for something beautiful, one looking for something ugly. They both find what they're looking for. I get the choice each morning. Am I hummingbird today or am I buzzard? If I do the prayer and meditation thing and do the things y'all have taught me, I have hummingbird days pretty consistently. It was very kind of Zine to put a towel down here for me to stand on. We invite God here, and I step out of my shoes because my feet could be on holy ground. And I try to carry that in my heart, and it's been here pretty good this time. And if you borrowed my God and you got touched, you might want to do that again. If you invited your God, do that. That's what that moment of silence is. When I started doing that, meetings got better everywhere. So I'd like to acknowledge God, thank you. I asked for an open heart, and I got one. I worked for my notes when I started, but my heart got open here, and I went to places I didn't know we were going to go. And if you don't think God's got a great sense of humor, look at who he's got trying to carry his message. I love you with all my heart. Thank you.